The next guest on my show is Chris Dover with Clovertac. And when I bring him on, we're going to talk about some things that he's working on his podcast. And of course, in this series that I've been doing, where we are losing our Second Amendment rights. But speaking of our Second Amendment rights, don't get canceled by credit card processing companies that cancel you because you're in the Second Amendment space. Revere Payments is a company that respects your right in the Second Amendment space, and they won't cancel you, and you'll save some money with their credit card processing fees. Most people do. Go to reverepayments.com/WWFA. Chris Dover with Clovertac, thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate you.
Hey, man. What was that website again? One more time, man.
It's reverepayments.com/WWFA. They're just good people. It's owned by a Christian woman who believes in our constitutional rights and a freedom, liberty minded person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of gun businesses complain that they can't get they get canceled by the credit card processing companies. Her company doesn't cancel people in the Second Amendment space, and she can usually save you some money.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I just wanted you to say it again, man.
I appreciate it.
A lot of guests don't understand this. I hate using the word sponsor because that's not it. Ad partners is typically what I'll say with my podcast. And a lot of guests don't comprehend that. They don't understand that. And they don't allow necessarily time and room in the conversation and things like that. But, the viewers, the listeners out there have to understand that type of thing is super important to be able to continue the work that we do. So,
I like to bring on partners that are our companies are actively working within our community to do good things, especially when it aligns with our constitutional rights. So it's people think, oh, sponsor, you're getting paid, but sometimes we don't get paid until our customers buy, and it supports us and them. And then on top of that, you're supporting with me. I bring on companies that are supporting our freedoms and liberties. And so it's good to do business with those companies.
Well, I'll take it even a step further. I was watching a Coleon Noir video the other day, and he was talking about bed sheets or something. And I'm like, does people really expect that Coleon Noir actually uses those bed sheets? Like, I seriously doubt that that's the case. And for me, I don't do anything with a quote unquote ad partner that I don't have a really strong relationship with that company, utilize those products. Sometimes been a lifelong fan of those products if the company is old enough. Right. So it goes even further than, much, much further than a check or the fact that they make good products. Like, they got to be good people. We've got to have an established relationship and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, just wanted to point that out because how a lot of people do. They'll click skip or jump forward, and they don't understand all the behind the scenes of what it takes to make all this stuff work. And I've monopolized enough of the conversation, so we can jump in whenever you're ready, man.
Well, I want to talk about some things that you're talking about on your platform. I'm in my Second Amendment series that I've been working on. I'm bringing in other podcasters, other influencers, other people in the space to kind of talk about what they're doing, not as a way to promote you. Of course, it's ends up being promotion, but as a way to enlighten people, because you know about things that I don't know about, and I know about things that you don't know about. But when we bring you and me to other people, we enlighten them on something that they might be able to get more actively engaged on. So I know that your show, you talk more about gadgets, but I also know that some of those gadgets end up being, targets, no pun intended, of the ATF or the local legislators. So there might be gun laws in your particular state, even though you're in the free state of Texas, in your community, your area, or things you might be aware of that you talk about on your show. Can you share some of that with us?
Well, yeah, with a variety of guests that I bring through the podcast, the tagline forever has been bringing together the industry and the community. So, we cover the gamut from, obviously the industry side, the manufacturers, that sort of thing, to other influencers, creators, whatnot, to the 2A organizations, and even those people that are carrying on the 2A fight, just by themselves, which there are quite a few that are doing that. Um, so I hear a lot of interesting stories from a lot of interesting people dealing with a lot of interesting issues. A lot of times from the manufacturer side, as you spoke to, um, especially in the firearm importation world. There's been some, not so much recently with the changes with the ATF, which has been, I think, good. Um, but historically, over the last several years, been some importation issues. So a lot of those firearm import companies have been having headaches. I've been hearing that, and then I can recall one influencer, creator, whatever you want to call it, I had on that she's out of New Mexico. So was able to, gain some insight on, what the landscape, 2A landscape is like there in New Mexico, which is not good, by the way. I explained
Right.
her.
I'm glad you brought that up. The other day, I just got a membership with USCCA,
Mhm,
and I was looking at their map, and this is not necessarily a plug for USCCA, but I plug that anybody that carries a gun needs to have concealed carry insurance,
mhm,
whatever company you pick. It just so happens that with USCCA, and I've got a couple different ones, by the way. So USCCA has a map of where you can click on and say, if I'm going to this state, what are their gun laws? And I was surprised how blue in the terms of Second Amendment that New Mexico is when it
mhm.
comes to gun rights. They don't have any reciprocal carry. It was surprising. So I'll let you continue from there.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to New Mexico, and I'm in Texas, so let me caveat further conversation on my part, because this is something that is a pet peeve of mine, and I hate it. I really hate it when somebody from Michigan or New York or uh, Washington State starts talking about the landscape and the culture and um, the social fabric of Texas. You're not in Texas. Shut the heck up. Um, that sort of thing. You're spouting opinion, but acting like it's fact, right? Matter of fact, you mentioned Jared, Guns and Gadget. Jared, me and him got crossways several times on this because he would make a video and some stuff going on in Texas that was not so. He was getting fed information and it was not, sorry, it just wasn't accurate. Um, it was an outside looking in perspective, and that's dangerous. Um, anyway, with that caveat, talking about New Mexico, um, Texas boy talking about New Mexico. I think New Mexico is one of those situations where New Mexico is economically challenged. I think there's great, wide reaching socioeconomic issues in New Mexico. And this comes from being in a bordering state, traveling through New Mexico many, many, many times, working out there for months on end, once upon a time, years ago. Everything just looks trailer trash, redneck, poor, right?
Wow.
Through the whole state. It's terrible. Um, that's the perception that I get of New Mexico. And the problem that you run into from a red blue perspective that you're pointing out, and I'm not necessarily a subscriber of rah this team or that. I think all
Right.
politicians suck. And I think the vast majority of them, regardless of blue or red, need to be run out on a rail, tarred and feathered, even if people so choose. Um, that aside, I think that New Mexico is one of those states that suffers from like I said, a wide-reaching socioeconomic thing. Because of that, people are more concerned with where's the next meal coming from, where this sort of thing. How are we going to make it? They don't have anything. I remember a buddy of mine that told me one time about the rich man and the poor man, and the poor man asked the rich man, man, you have everything. What do you have to worry about? And the rich man said, losing it all, right? Um, so there's something to be said about owning things, about having things, about whether it's vast wealth or not, right? and I think that gets into that socioeconomic issue where, a vast majority of New Mexico people just fall into that category where they got bigger fish and other things to worry about than whether they can carry a gun or whether they can own a gun because, to truth be told, they don't have the money to buy the gun anyway. So,
Wow.
right.
I didn't realize New
Um,
Mexico was so depressed like that.
that's just that's my outside looking in perception. If you're out there and you're from New Mexico, hey, there's probably a comment section down below somewhere. Chime in and give us the boots on the ground analysis. Tell me where I'm wrong because I'm perfectly fine with that.
I love it. Let's do that. I'll have to put that in the comment section. It's interesting you say that. The perspective of the wealthy man has everything to be worried about when it comes to losing it. It's kind of like Texas and New Mexico. Texas, people probably worry about losing gun rights and losing their rights because there's always that talk that Texas is becoming a blue state, and not going to be as strong of a red state pretty soon. And then New Mexico has already gone that way to become a blue state. And, they have a lot less people in New Mexico. The one time I drove through New Mexico, I just remember driving hours and you see these houses way off in the distance, it seems. And even when I went to a little city, it was like, where are all the houses kind of thing,
Right.
But people show up at the Walmarts and in the town centers, I guess. But
Right.
but either way, it has such a much lower population, and I think it went blue a long time ago. So people aren't worried about their rights as much as they're worried about survival and the economy. Whereas Texas, they have everything to worry about with losing the rights they have. Is that a good bounce?
I mean, maybe, yeah. I think so. I don't think it's that. I mean, very philosophical insight there, William, but I don't think it's that deep. I really don't. I think I think we have that in Texas too, that, it's a family of five. Mom and dad both work jobs, and they don't pay attention to politics and all this other stuff because by the time that they get off work and worry about little Susie's ballet practice and little Johnny's, baseball practice and what, they don't got time to worry about politics. They're not paying
Right.
attention to that. And at best, maybe it's worse. At worst, you be the judge of what fits appropriately. They're getting their information, what little they might get, through headline culture, which is extremely dangerous, by the way, or social media, which is even worse. So it's either, coming from Facebook, Jared Post, or it's straight up headline culture, which is usually the headline is not what the article is about. It's typically the opposite. Just so you know.
And now with AI, so much of it's AI generated that you just you never it's getting even worse. It's magnified by AI.
Yeah, this is true.
Are there any
AI annoys the bejesus out of me, man?
Yeah.
That's a long conversation we probably shouldn't get into.
Oh yeah, I've done two interviews on AI, and one person was focused on health, and one person was focused on the evils of the data centers, and everybody has a unique perspective on it. But now that they're under such scrutiny and more people are waking up to them, maybe we can put them a little bit more in check. Not we're always going to use AI. I mean, there's a need for that digital world.
Yeah.
We just want to have it in checks and balances with people and our environment. What
my complaint is it doesn't work. My complaint is it sucks, even if you pay for it. So my complaint is not on the resources. It's not on a political bias. It's not on the robots are taking over. It's not even that. It's like AI is held as this bastion of technological advantage, and it sucks. Even if you're spending $20 a month, it flat out sucks. So, anyway, moving on.
What's interesting is that $20 doesn't go very far, because when by the time you start learning it and using it, people keep talking about how many more credits they have to buy. It's like a drug. They get
addicted. I haven't had to do that yet, and I use it a lot, William. I use it a lot, from thumbnail generation to helping with script, and a lot of it. I use it a lot.
Really?
Not just on the Clovertac side of projects, but my my media company is Clovertac Productions, which is an umbrella for many, many things besides the guns and whatever, right? And so across all of the different, we'll call them properties, right? Um, it gets used a lot. And maybe it's just not the things I'm doing are not resource intensive to use the credits. I don't know, but I've never had an issue other than, $20 a month covers everything I need to do. Um, it just doesn't cover it well. And like I said, because for the most part, it sucks.
Well, Chris, what else are you talking about on your show to these days? What else are you bringing to light that we want more people to be aware of?
I don't know. I mean, that's interesting because uh, don't really have a purpose or a plan, right? It's kind of like before we kicked this podcast off, we were like, "Hey, it's just a conversation.
Yeah,
Turn the mic
absolutely.
on, hit record, let's roll with it." Right? And I think that's what people want to hear. I think people want to hear real, and they want to hear not just real, but real time. Right?
I agree.
They want real, and they want real time. And so, this scripted, I have questions. There's a time and a place for that. Don't get me wrong. If I'm looking for the bullet points and I'm looking to actually, hone skills and something I can study and learn and maybe apply later on or that sort of thing. But if I just want all encompassing quality entertainment that, in the midst of that, I'm going to learn something as well. I just want a real time conversation. That's me.
Oh no, I agree.
And
I
one of
agree
the,
with you 100%. I mean,
yeah,
95% of the time,
yeah,
I don't have any questions written down for my guest. I go straight off the cuff. I start out with a conversation and kind of base to the R. I kind of go, okay, this is the direction I'd like to go in, or this is kind of, I don't want to say an agenda, but I
uh-huh,
always like to talk about freedoms and liberties and where we're losing them and
yeah,
that kind of thing, and get perspective of other people. But I always like flying off the cuff. I
well,
like you said. I think real
it's,
conversation and just and look, there's a lot of truth and honesty in just real conversation that I think people pick up on and they really, really like.
uh,
People can tell when something's scripted, um, and they just kind of, they shy away from it. And I think it's why I think Joe Rogan is so popular.
yeah,
His conversations are just more real. The people open up to him, and it's more honest and
just very organic. Yeah.
dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah. Very organic. And all of the popular ones seem to be that way for sure. Um, the trap you fall into, I guess, or the danger of that. I thrive off of it. I enjoy it, and that's why you say, what's the theme or the goal or who knows, man? Because from one show to the next, it just kind of depends on what's brought up and what's talked about, right? Um, and that's a danger for me. It's even been demonstrated here today. I've ran you off the rails at least probably half a dozen times in no longer than we've talked today. And it's just because I'm so used to just the fluid dynamic, like I said,
Yeah.
real life, real time conversation that, I just talk and I just go, right. And wherever it goes, it goes. I'm fine with it.
I love it. I
Um,
absolutely love it.
you know,
It's one of
and
the
so
reasons why I
it,
brought you
it
on.
doesn't
I
make
needed one of
it
those.
makes for a good host, not necessarily a good guest. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm a horrible
Uh,
guest, man.
oh man, no, you are a great guest. I don't even think you realize that's why I like bringing on other podcasters and influencers, because when you switch the role, you get unique information. When
Yeah.
you switch that role, like just like when people bring me on their show, I
Right.
always find that the when it gets switched like that, I think a little bit differently. I get a little bit different information out, and then like we talked about a second ago, it just becomes more organic,
Right.
if you will. But I do
Uh,
love a lot of things that you work on, and from seeing you at the NRA conferences or the GOA conferences. I know the types of things that you're interested in, so it's always
yeah.
interesting to me to find out what you're working on.
Right. Well, one of the things that is since Shot Show this year, and we brought up kind of Facebook and the dark side of it earlier, just a minute ago, but with headline culture and misinformation and whatnot. But since Shot, I'm leaning pretty heavily into Facebook. and specifically verticals and reels and really short. I call it lowbrow content. I don't even necessarily like making it. The amazing thing, though, is that we've been given a lot of room and freedom, not ultimate room and freedom, but compared to what we have historically had for the last 20 years ish on Facebook, um, we've been given a lot of opportunity and freedom, I think, as creators on in the gun space on Facebook.
Right.
And it's amazing right now in the last few months, which is crazy. Who knows how long it'll last? Probably an election cycle because that's the way it goes. But the what is amazing is to see the hunger for that type of content on the platform since it was opened up, and it was a little easier to be able to create on the platform,
Mhm.
content on that platform. Is the demand that's there? There are people that are starving for firearm related type content on Facebook. It's evident, and that's kind of cool to see, quite honestly.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I've noticed where I used to get smacked a little bit by Facebook, years ago if I posted something about guns or health freedom, and now I've noticed they don't smack me anymore. Look, I was
Well, not just that, William, but you're getting more traffic too, I'm sure.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I've noticed that too. And let me tell you, and look, I'm one that got banned on YouTube twice.
Yeah.
YouTube took my channel down twice, but recently they've been leaving me alone. And some of the stuff was just real basic stuff. I interviewed a guy who survived cancer, and he told about the story about how he beat it, and that
Right.
was the final draw for YouTube. They took my channel down a year or so ago, and when they put it back up almost a year later, they eliminated about half my interviews.
Right. Yeah, figures. I
Oops.
think with YouTube
Oops.
right now, I don't know that it's as much they're leaving everybody alone. I'm talking about the gun and the 2A space,
Mm,
as they've got such a problem with AI, with what they call unoriginal content, with just AI slop, right?
yeah.
That they're having to deal with. That's taking up the vast majority of their time, and they don't have time to deal with the petty stuff, right?
Right.
Which is gun related.
I love that's the petty stuff. I love it. Where do you think we're losing freedoms in the most in the gun space in America?
Not many places, in my opinion, William. Obviously we've got the problem children that we're constantly going to have: California,
Right.
New York, Illinois, New Jersey, so forth and so on. New Jersey was really close to getting a Republican governor. Again, not rah one side or the other, but I do believe in a balance. Uh, I do believe in balance of power, and I think party lines and that sort of thing. Uh, bipartisan legislatures and things like that can sometimes be a benefit. Uh, but that was something interesting in the last several years. Um, I would say, two things that stick out is kind of the way that Virginia has gone. That doesn't worry me on a national level, with the AWB that they put in place there now. Or there, I don't know. I don't know if it's being currently enforced. It doesn't seem like it's going to be. There obviously are lawsuits all over the place, right? Shout out to, Fire Policy Coalition and FPC and GOA and NRA and all the agencies that are fighting the fight on that. But I don't think that Virginia, a lot of people want to use that to fearmonger, and I don't think Virginia is an indication of, I mean, let's be honest. Virginia is a suburb of DC. Let's just be
Right.
honest about
Exactly.
that.
I mean
And
that's what
so
ruined DC.
right,
I mean
like,
Virginia.
is it out of left field with Virginia? It's not really, in my opinion. But again, this is an outside looking in perspective too. I'm not a Virginian, obviously. Um, and I feel for the God fearing, God total 2A people that are there that have to deal with it. But I don't think it's any indication that I think the wind is at our back. I think we're moving
Mhm.
in the right direction. So the people that do use that to fear monger, keep in mind again, headline culture and the drama gets the clicks and blah 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 blah. So you got to keep all that in mind and have that perspective. The other thing that again doesn't surprise me is Washington wanting to get rid of the hunting and fishing. Yeah, that's pretty
That
adjacent to
that
that.
yeah, that's
That
a in
speaks
indirect
to a
attack.
yeah, that speaks to a lot of other freedoms other than just 2A related.
Right.
Uh, and in what world is do you think eliminating all game management is not a problem? Like that's going to create downstream issues that are massive. I get that you love the animals. I love them too, especially battered and fried and on my plate. But uh, yeah, it's horrible. I mean, if we did not control deer populations, and there's really no way to do it other than what few people. Let's be honest, not that many people hunt anymore, right?
Right.
Um, but with what few people actually do hunt, um, even then in certain areas, you're not able to control populations. And when you do, what happens to your farmland? What happens to those crops? Deers love peas, and I do too, but deers love them more than me. And they will completely eat them up and destroy them before I get a chance to eat them if we don't manage some game. What I find kind of ironic in from a two-base sense is how how they will in one breath say that the Second Amendment is about hunting, which we know it's not. Maybe in a very, very, very small part. Uh, there's an argument to be made to elaborate on that, and I've made it several times that quote unquote the security of a free state. If the people are starving, that obviously is a threat to the security of a free state. So
Right.
the people do need to be able to hunt, most likely to be able to feed themselves. Um, but that aside, it's mostly about oppression and fighting back against oppression and tyranny. Um, but in one breath, they'll say, "Oh, the Second Amendment was written so you could go hunt," and then now they're trying to take hunting away. Like,
Yeah.
excuse me,
That's a
like,
great that's a great I look, you got I totally was not expecting that. That was like, bam, I got clotheslined on that one. That's a great point. I love that.
yeah, yeah, and that just shows the hypocrisy, right, of some of these people. Like they don't know from 1 minute to the next. There's no congruency and no consistency in any of their arguments. They don't follow any pathway of logic at all. And don't get me wrong, I'm not some mad philosopher that's studied and versed in all forms of logic and all of this stuff. But to me, it's just common sense. Like
Well, it was
if you say that, hey, this specific inalienable right recognized by uh, the Second Amendment and written in protection through the Second Amendment is about hunting, and then at the same time you're trying to take hunting away. Like, make that make sense, please, because it
right.
doesn't.
That it's very interesting because I simply thought it was just a backdoor way to get rid of guns, get rid of guns, which it essentially is, I guess. And
Yeah.
they're trying to ban those semi-automatic fishing poles, but
Right. Right. The
at the
Ron
same,
Popeil pocket fisherman, dude, it's deadly. It's deadly. We got to get rid of
eh,
you know what
hey,
I'm talking about. The younger crowd, you'll have to go YouTube Ron Popeil pocket fisherman because you don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that was the assault pistol fishing rod of the day right there, baby. You could just
I wonder how many people, how
bail out
many
of the
people
car anytime in any place at any creek and go fishing, man. Come on.
how many people have died from an infection that they received from an accidental hook in the mouth from the pocket fisherman?
or the hand because it's in the trunk of the car. And you jab yourself with a rusty hook. Now you got tetanus and you get lockjaw, and man, the healthcare cost associated with that. I mean, it's just terrible. We got to get rid of those.
Yeah, we got rid of those bad
I
fishing
don't
poles.
I don't think it's just to be fair, I don't think that the particular organizations, I think there's elements within them that are 2A. Don't get me wrong, that are pushing the no hunting, no fishing thing. I think they are, because we're all multifaceted voters and we all have, different opinions on different things. We could be extreme right wing on some things and extreme left on the others
Mm-hmm.
in the same conversation. But I don't think that for the ones that kind of for the animals, that crowd, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's a 2A play. And the whole fishing thing, lumping in the fishing thing with it, I think is why I don't think it's a 2A play, but it is, unfortunately,
Right.
directly a 2A play as well.
Well, like you say, it's multifaceted. I'm sure, in there's a lot of those little activist groups in that state. Some of the activist groups that are against guns are wanting that law to get rid of guns. Others that don't like fishing are trying to you use it as a way to get rid of fishing and hunting. So I'm sure there's
Yeah.
many, groups on the individual issues or
Well,
the individual aspects of it. And like you said, we're all multifaceted voters. When it
we've
goes that. But
we've
I
got a
think what also happens in this, like when you talk about Virginia and you talk about taking away hunting and fishing in Washington, in the state of Washington, when that pendulum swings really far in one direction, it always wakes up a lot of people in the process.
yeah.
And Virginia trying to make that big of a move, and Washington trying to make as big of a move as they're making, it wakes up a lot of people that I think stop it from happening in other states. I almost think that our country kind of needs that pendulum to swing real far in a direction to wake up the average minded person, that common sense person, the people that are really sick and tired of politics in general, regardless of
Right.
whether they're right or left or whether they believe right or left or whatever they lean to. They're just tired of politics in general. So when they see politicians go that extreme, it wakes up the sleeping giants of the world that don't like politics in general and gets them involved and engaged again. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
It's
for
a
the
lot to
most part,
unpack.
I don't disagree with you there. Uh, yeah, I can see that. The the only problem with that is that, typically speaking, once legislation is passed, once laws are enacted, uh, what are the odds of ever getting them removed? Right.
Right.
So even though that pendulum, and you're talking about the state that enacted that, right? I agree with you in the sense of it could wake up people in other states that are more active in the fight of making sure that it doesn't happen in the first place, because that's the key. Once it happens in the first place, what laws have ever come off the books, right? Like
Right.
you can't possibly, in your lifetime, you could never recite every law that we have, local, state, federal, or otherwise, in the United States. If you didn't eat, didn't sleep,
Mm-hmm.
didn't do anything but recite law, you would never finish in your lifetime. However, the stuff that's been repealed, absolutely, you could do that. You could probably do
Right.
that in a matter of a few years, right? That's how stark and how vast the difference is between things that do make it and get passed and get put on the books and things that come off. And
That's right.
so the play is to not let it happen in the first place, unfortunately. Now, speaking of Washington and the hunting thing, um, it's going to be a ballot measure, it looks like. And so hopefully there's enough buzz nationwide right now and everything else that the people wake up and don't allow it in the first place.
Right.
Let's hope that's the case.
Well, or like I said, wakes up enough people elsewhere to help stop it from happening. Because I always tell people, watch what's happening in other states, because soon as they come to your state, whether they can get it or not, So hey, right now it's the state of Washington. Oregon is just as blue of a state as Washington is. It won't take
Right.
much time before the Oregon goes, wow, that was a great way to get rid of all those guns without making it a gun law. Let's do that. it's just a matter of time before it starts creeping around. But look,
Right.
the benefit is the same when the pendulum swings to the right, and the people on the right are getting Republican conservative minded lawsuits, which are usually an expansion of freedom and liberty, in my opinion. And that's a good thing because other states go, wow, Florida got it, then Texas gets it, then Arkansas gets it. Before you know, you've got this red southern, quadrant that is about freedom and liberty, and it wakes up more people to how beneficial that is.
Well, I think talking in the bigger sense of liberty and freedom. It's a very uncomfortable thing, right? Liberty is by definition dangerous, and whether you're talking about the left or the right, and Texas is a great example of this on the right. Unfortunately, this is where you get with people are multifaceted. Sometimes they have some pretty left wing, ideology that goes along with some right wing ideology, and I'm definitely one of those people. So getting into the idea of overall total liberty, people could make their own decisions and whatnot. And the government should be out of private life and blah, blah, blah. With Texas, you've got, or with the left and right, you've got the people that go, X is dangerous, therefore we need to legislate, regulate, and or ban X.
Right. Right.
And they don't understand that it's dangerous subjectively, not objectively. Dangerous to who? Dangerous how? Dangerous when? There's tons of nuance to that. But there's that old phrase that liberty is, dangerous liberty, right? Liberty is dangerous. You've got the freedom to go skydive. You don't got the guarantee that parachute's going to open. You don't got the guarantee that you're going to live through it if you go skydive or bungee jump or whatever. But you certainly have the freedom to go do that, right? Same way with getting in a race car and running down a track at 200 miles an hour. Got the freedom and liberty to do that, but there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee to the outcome, right? And so you've got to make a very informed decision. If you're going to go skydive, you're probably going to vet the company that's doing it. You're probably going to go through as much training as you possibly can beforehand. You're probably going to have the best equipment, blah, blah, blah. Right. So, you look at Texas, whether we're talking about vapes, and some different things like that. There's some stuff that the Texas legislature has done I don't agree with, because I think they're seriously infringing on some liberty. Like, people can make those decisions and make those choices, and big daddy government, like regulating and legislating that's completely a moral, subjective, gray area issue, and the government has no business being involved in that, right? So that is a drawback of Texas. Well, like, they're kind of Bible thumping, Christian-y, let's force everybody into some morality people too, and that is a right-leaning issue. That is a problem on the right side that I have with the right side of the aisle. That's why I said all politicians, right and left, suck. That's a problem I have with that. Is when you start,
I know. I now see where you're going with that. I'm interrupting for 1 second before we get too far, because I'm going to finish that thought in a second. But
go ahead.
I guess when morality crosses the line of legality, there's a point where you have morality, and then you have what's legal to do.
Yeah, but the problem is, who decides when the morality issue is worthy of legal action? Who decides that? And how do you objectively decide that? Like, where is the inherent non-self-inflicted harm, right, that's being done? And even if that non-self-inflicted, or not, what did I say? The self-inflicted harm, even if that is the case, what gives you the right? What I like, people drink, people do drive fast, people do a lot of things that are, people skydive and bungee jump, the example, which is about as benign as you can get, right? That's dangerous stuff. But and it's iffy and it's wishy-washy and bad things can come of it.
Yeah.
Let's take the vape issue, right? They didn't pass a law saying you can't buy a vape if you're under 18. That's not what they said. They passed laws that said if you're selling vapes, you can't sell these certain vapes. And here it's basically a AWB for vapes, is what they're passing, right? Which the AWBs make no sense because it's all about features, right? It's not about anything else. AWB, for example, if it's got a bayonet lug, if it's got a telescoping stock, if it's got a barrel shroud, right? Those are all look pretty features, like they do nothing. Right. So it wasn't an age thing with vapes here. It's like, oh, the battery can only be blah, blah, blah. And, oh, it can only have this charger and the cartridges have to be this. And, oh, they got to be made in a certain country. If they're not made in certain countries, then like, excuse me.
Right.
Like you're going to allow, like, it's okay for it to come in from Vietnam, but if it comes in from Taiwan, that's bad. Like, excuse me. That's kind of that seems kind of an arbitrary limitation of freedom to me, to be picking and choosing the winners, and you're meddling in the free market, and it makes no sense.
So they haven't made vaping illegal; they're just making certain vapes and certain features on the vapes illegal.
Yes, they have blacklisted, right? Basically, a ban on certain stuff, right?
Right.
And you've got tons and tons and tons of businesses. But here's the thing, and it's kind of like the gun control thing, right? With bans on guns. When you get the right-leaning politicians that talk, sometimes it's just suggestive undertones. And then sometimes they tell you the game plan and they just be blatantly honest with you. There's anti-gunners that do that too, right? They give away the game plan. They don't mind. And so I've heard it both ways speaking of the vape thing since this has happened, that, the politicians will say some of them will haul around, right? And they try to, not take the stance and not show their hand, and that's fine. It's pretty obvious when they do that, what they're doing. But then you've got others that'll point blank tell you, yeah, we shouldn't have vapes. People don't need vapes. Like, it's bad for your health. It's bad for this. It's bad for that. It leads to other things. And, even though there are age restrictions on them, kids are still getting a hold of them. So we need to get rid of them. It's like, excuse me, if you're coming for the vapes,
and by the way, so are some
small leap. If you're coming for the vapes, all you need is a change of heart or a change of mind or to read a book or to whatever. The Holy Spirit move against you or move upon you, and you're coming for my guns, right? So let's be consistent with liberty. Let's be consistent. If people are trusted enough to be free, to have freedom and liberty, let's let them have freedom and liberty. That's all I'm saying.
I absolutely love that because I agree. Look, I don't like the smell of marijuana in public. I don't like. What's that?
It's horrible.
Yeah, I don't like the smell of vapes. I don't like when you're standing next to somebody that vapes. They tend to blow the vape in your direction, and they go, "It's hard. It's not cigarette smoke. It's vape." And I get and while I don't like that, I agree with their freedom to be able to do that. And I think that when politicians start banning little freedoms like that, and let's face it, these aren't politicians that are saying, "Oh, I want to preserve the health of the young people, so we're going to ban vapes, for anybody under the age of 30 or 18 or whatever the case may be, or we're going to, I'm Joe politician and I'm looking out for the health of adults, and the ones that vape don't realize what's bad. I'm going to do something, so I'm going to ban it for them." That's actually not where it's usually coming from. It's usually originating from some lobbyist that was hired by some group that's a business and industry that's being, the cigarette industry is being hurt by the vaping industry. So the cigarette industry creates a sub-organization, that's labeled something like, Citizens for the Health of People Who Don't Know About Vaping. Of course, I'm pulling that out of my ears. And then the cigarette industry hires a lobbyist for that organization to go lobby in Texas or wherever. It says vaping's bad. we should limit vaping because it's hurting these middle-aged people. And nobody follows the money on where it's coming from, but it's usually not a smart politician that's carrying the law. I've watched this happen in Louisiana. You've got all these laws that you go, where did that come from? And then when you start digging around, it's usually some, organization that is created by some other industry that's hired a lobbyist, and they go to some politician to say, hey, don't you want to be able to say that you stopped the deaths of middle-aged people who are vaping and didn't know about it? And they go, yeah, I want to be the hero. And then the lobbyist and the politician 9 times out of 10 has no idea what they're really doing, or what how should I say, whose agenda they're really pushing, other than trying to make themselves look good. And that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Well, back to something that you said that about the vaping. You said, I'm standing there and I don't like the, cigarette smoke, vape, whatever it might be. They blow it in my direction. Okay, well, there's a big difference, William. Chastise you for a minute here. Big difference between some butthole that's blowing vape in your face in public than the ability for that butthole to buy the vape in the first place.
I agree 100%.
Difference between the access,
I love it,
and then the action of it. It's just like a gun. Go buy a gun all day long. That don't mean you can go murder somebody with it.
Right. I agree with you.
That doesn't mean you can walk out in public and load it up and swing it around and muzzle flash everybody on the courthouse square with it, or what. Doesn't mean you can do that. Big difference between the access and the action. Big difference. Right.
No, and I agree. I agree with you. Like I'm not against vaping.
Upon that guy being a butthole, that you probably should have just punched him in the face.
Yeah, right. Chris, that's all I like. You old school, just like me.
Dude. I smoke a pipe. And, I travel a lot. You said that earlier, going to shows and different things, and so there are places that you can't smoke. There are, whatever. And so I'll be at a hotel or this or that, and it's like, okay, I want to smoke, and I'll go down, and I usually try to find a little off the beaten path, a little corner. I'm out of the way. I'm whatever. There may occasionally be somebody that walks by or whatever. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
But, I don't go down in the middle of the lobby of the biggest bar or whatever, up in the big bunch of middle of everybody. And it's just being considerate.
Yeah.
That being said, like, I have never had, not once, ever had a bad word that anybody that has ever smelled my tobacco pipe when I was smoking. I get compliments all the time. And I'm not saying I've never had anybody that hadn't walked by or whatever and maybe turned up their nose or under their breath. It could happen. But I've never had anybody directly confront me and go, oh, it's horrible. It's terrible. And
you're considerate.
It's always, that smells awesome. It reminds me of my grandfather, or, always. It's always a compliment.
As long as you don't get the comment, hey, you look like my grandfather.
Well, I get that sometimes too, but that's okay.
Unfortunately, I do too, but that's a whole other story. I'm with you.
You're right. It's like I said, it's the difference between, again, the access and the action. And people have to come back into this. Gets way back into society and everything else. We have to get back into being aware and compassionate and considerate and all of the things that once upon a time, in neighborhoods and cul-de-sacs and, communities across this country we once had. Nowadays it's all about me. Nobody really cares outside of them and whatever. And there's no situational or social awareness nowadays.
Right. That's that's a great point that you just made. It's almost like a drop the mic on that thought moment, because we in society have become less considerate of each other because we've lost a lot of our social skills because of social media. And I don't want to blame social media. I'm going to blame parenting also. A lot of parents abdicated their authority and their teaching skills to spend time with their children and teach them about how to be in a social order or out in public, and they've abdicated their authority to video games or to the iPad or to the television or to the schools instead of being actual parents. So now we're in a generation of people that don't know basic consideration. They don't realize, hey, I have, these actions, I have to be considerate with other people. And of course, a generation ago, they created, designated smoking areas because everybody just smoked wherever they wanted to. People have lost those skills, and now the vapors and the legalized marijuana states, now you walk to the street, it's just everywhere. So that's what that's the thing I don't like. So it's not me being against their freedom to do so. It's against me being against their discourteousness, their lack of consideration for others in public.
I think parenting, I think you're right. I think that's probably where it started. I think at some point along the way, technology played a role in multiple ways. One way was the uh, uh, how to obtain information, right? Once upon a time, if you needed to learn something, needed to know something, needed to find something out, you had to go talk to somebody.
Right.
You had to
Even if
call
it was a
somebody. You had
librarian.
to go see. I got to go see my buddy and figure out, get him to show me how to do this or whatever. Now you can watch a YouTube video, or you can use AI to tell you or whatever. And then you got social media, which took it even further. That idea even further. So technology has helped widen the gap. I think what put the death knell in the coffin was the lockdowns. I think the lockdowns, when people were forced to not communicate, sometimes with people in their own home, with not being able to get together and socialize and communicate and participate and all of that. And we haven't climbed back out of that, that lockdown mentality that separated people.
I think even though that was a short, even though that was a short time period, and even though that was like such a short amount of time that we were in lockdown, I agree with you, because I think what happened was people ended up being in a space where they got comfortable with just themselves. And there's a point in with the human spirit that it's easier to not have to interact with other people. So we went through a generation of young people learning that they felt safer, happier, easier, not having to be associated with people in public. And I think maybe there was some desensitization there, in that process. And then of course there's another group of people that it only magnified their fears of catching things from other people. So they realize, oh wow, I don't have to, put myself into society. My fear of catching something is suppressed when I stay, in my home or behind a mask.
Yeah, it was kind of multi-pronged, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
and I would agree with that. To your point of it was a short time. Let's drop some science. It only takes 30 days to build a habit.
Right.
You don't believe me?
That's it. Yeah.
You don't believe me? Whether it's taking care of your health or working out, or force yourself to do something every day for 30 days and see if it doesn't become a habit. I guarantee you it will.
That's right.
Like, and the lockdowns lasted how long? In some places, a very, very, very long time, way more than 30 days, right? It was supposed to be 2 weeks. It's the start. That might not have been so bad. But as it drove out, the weeks turned to months and the months turned to years in some places. That was even worse when you're talking about building a habit. You're talking about reinforcement for even a longer period of time. So being able to come out of that is kind of like quitting drinking or quitting smoking, or, it's like something like that.
Conditioned a lot of people.
It's tough. And there's a lot of people that are not going to recover from it.
No.
Right. They're going to be locked into that pattern, for the rest of their life. And it's probably going to end up being generational, unfortunately.
I look at the park I walk at regularly. There's a lady out there that I used to see her before COVID, because I've been walking out there for probably 20 years. Maybe not 20, maybe 15 or 18, but and I used to see her at the park, and she's all friendly. And then during COVID, when we were able to go to the parks, she still, to this day, I saw her last week. She still to this day wears a face shield with a mask on her face underneath the face shield.
Wow.
And I know that I don't think she's unhealthy, because she's been walking there for as long as I've noticed her. But
Right.
right during COVID, boom, that pops up, and so she's still living in fear.
Yeah.
Still living in fear, and that's like to your point. It it was such a short time, but it conditioned a lot of people, and
Boy, it's sad, because we get back into the whole idea of dangerous liberty. It's sad because the people that live, let fear dictate their life, or let maybe it's ideology, or whatever influence it is that dictates their life in a negative way.
yeah,
They're just a prisoner of they're a victim of their own prison, right?
right.
Like they've just created a prison for themselves, and so they truly don't know what it's like, and that's what's scary. And this kind of gets back. We kind of come full circle into the New Mexico thing, I think.
Yeah,
Right? A
right.
little bit here because of what I said about New Mexico earlier on. You kind of get this situation when they have essentially made themselves their own prisoner, they're a prisoner of their own mind, if you will. Well, if you're already a prisoner in your own mind, whether that be because of fear or various other things,
Right.
how hard is it to then make that jump to become a prisoner or whatever of somebody else?
Or
I don't think
government.
it's that hard of a jump, right?
Or government.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah. If you've already made yourself a prisoner, how much are you really going to fight when Big Daddy government comes along and says you need to do X, Y, and Z and do it now? I mean,
especially when
you've already self-limited your liberties and freedoms. You've self-limited, so you're apparently okay with the idea on some level. And especially if you look at, again, get back into the time frames and the lockdowns and whatever, if you've done it for weeks, months, years on end, you're conditioned as well, right? So you were okay with it to start with. Now you're conditioned. How big of a leap is it when some government or whatever comes in that you're just, how likely is it you're going to roll over? And I think it's pretty likely.
Just like you said a minute ago, I'll steal your term, full circle. We went full circle on the New Mexico thing. Earlier, we were talking about all the government regulations and laws that have been created. And if we started talking about them, it would take a lifetime to probably say them all. People have gotten conditioned, not just during the COVID lockdowns, but we have been conditioned over our lifetimes, generational lifetimes, of being conditioned to accept the rules and the laws that government puts out there. And it's not just the federal government, our local laws. You have to have a permit to put a driveway in. You have to have your mailbox in a certain place. It's like all these little things. It is made for those people that don't prioritize freedom. They are more comfortable with somebody telling them what to do. They are more comfortable with a government that says, we're taking care of you on, you get a rebate check from us every year, even though it's your own money. Maybe you're on a program, you get a little money here, maybe you're getting some food stamps. We're taking care of you in so many ways, and we have other ways to take care of you. And by the way, we're going to create all these laws because people who are in cages feel comfortable. People who are confined or held tightly, and I'm making a bad analogy. A baby, when it's held, usually quiets down. A dog, when it goes in its crate, usually feels comfort level. There's a certain comfort when you abdicate your insecure feelings to somebody else or the government to create boundaries in society that makes you feel, well, they've got my back. They're taking care of me. I feel secure. Bring on more rules and regulations. I'm good with
Yeah.
that.
And there are people, I don't know what the percentage are. Uh, this is anecdotal, but I do know there is a certain percentage of people. I have a cousin, bless his heart. He's a great guy, but he only thrives in prison, and he will forever be a convict.
Is it a brother, you said?
Forever have a record. He will literally go steal a lawnmower or go steal something to go to prison. He cannot function outside of prison. He cannot
Wow.
hold a job. Now, he can hold a job in prison. He can create the most beautiful art you've ever seen while he's in prison. Um, he can function fine in prison. Um, and having seen that for he's older than I am for decades now, right?
This is your brother, you said?
Cousin. I've got a cousin.
Cousin.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's a few years older than I am. And like he was getting in trouble before he was 18, right?
Hmm.
He's always just been that way. And he just got institutionalized, or there was just something off in his brain. Like, I don't know what the deal is with the dude. And he's not a violent person. He would do anything for anybody and all this kind of stuff. And he literally will serially commit crimes to get back into prison. It's nuts. It's nuts.
This
And
is
do
yeah.
well again. Do well when he's in prison, except for the fact of being in prison, right? But if
It
he's
is
out, he can't hold a job. He's homeless. He gets on drugs. So all kinds of craziness.
goes to show you, like we've been saying, more some people are just comfortable being restricted.
Yeah, they can't handle. I think they can't handle the freedom. There's people that can't handle freedom and liberty, right? I think
right.
there really is people that can't handle that concept, and they
Right.
should probably move to England if I'm being honest, or China or somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, China more like it with all the freedoms they're losing over
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Go move somewhere. Maybe Canada at this point with some of the shenanigans they're pulling, but go move somewhere where there's not liberty and freedom, and you don't have to worry about it. Don't try to change change here. We
Right.
like our liberty and freedom. At least I
I
do.
love it too. I absolutely love it. Man, Clover, Tack, Chris Dover. I love I love the rhyme there on that. I love talking to you, my friend. You're
Yeah, always fun.
you got a lot of good insight today.
Always fun. Opinions, they're worth what they are.
Well, but it's that real conversation where we didn't go into some scripted, question answer type thing. We
Right,
just talked about in its freedoms and liberties in a pure raw sense, if you will. And I think it kind of brings out not only the nature of people who feel comfortable with it, but I think we helped expose a little bit of where the leak for freedom is, or
right,
where our country may be leaking, or where humanity is leaking freedom, more like it.
right. Yeah,
On
yeah.
that. Well,
I think
where
so.
do one? I do like to ask one last question when I'm wrapping up my show,
Yeah,
and that is, where do you think that we are losing freedom the fastest in America?
man. I honestly, this is gonna be a little controversial. Uh, I think because I think most people don't see it, and it's what I talked about earlier. I think the right is stripping us from freedom at a faster pace than the left is stripping us
Wow.
of freedom. I don't think it's as in your face, bold moves. I don't think that it is big, hot button issues, but I think that we have to be really, really careful and recognize, regardless of which side of the aisle it's coming from, restrictions on freedom is, at the end of the day, restrictions on freedom, regardless. And little things add up over time. We keep down this road of, man, the vape and the lolly picture and the whatever, and we're going to regulate some morality and do. where are we in 20, 30, 50, 80 years, right? We're going to be long gone, you and I,
Right.
unless we can get our brains uploaded into the AI, which is a possibility. But,
Right.
um, but our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, our great great grandchildren, whatever, what's the world, what's the country, what's liberty and freedom going to look like to them? And I think that is something that if you fancy yourself on the right, if I could leave you with anything, I would
Yeah.
say scrutinize your own camp, please, because there's a
Scrutinize your
lot
own
of
what?
things going on that people blindly follow because they agree with it, right? We can totally agree that vaping is not the greatest thing. We can totally agree on all of those morals and premises, right? But then when we get down into the nuances, right, when it comes to the liberties to do this or do that, that's where the scrutiny is warranted. And I think that there's not enough self-examination going on in this day and age. There's a lot of blind following that happens. People are just not taught to critically think anymore, unfortunately.
Right.
So be mindful of your own camp and your own house and make sure all that's cleaned up as much as you possibly can clean that up. And then you have a little better ground to complain about the opposite side, right? Whoever that
Right.
might be, whether you're talking about the right versus left or Democrat versus Republican or whatever it might be. If your own house is pretty clean, as far as infringements on overall liberty, then you can complain about the infringements happening elsewhere. But until then, it looks a little hypocritical, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. You say you said a little bit differently than I normally say it, and maybe I'm not as extreme on pointing out the right as maybe you just did, but I agree with you. I agree that in some ways the far right is doing things to control us, whether it's removing freedoms or controlling certain freedoms as much as the far left is doing. But where I think the far right is even more guilty is that they don't do anything about, like, people like to complain about how Democrats are stealing our freedoms or liberties, or Democrats are doing this, they're cheating, they're doing this, they're fraudulent, whatever the case may be. There's too many people on the right that don't do anything about it. They'll criticize it, they'll condemn it, they will, talk how horrible these whatever those things are, but they won't do anything about it. And so that in itself removes freedom and liberty and the access to freedom and liberty and inhibits us more than anything too.
You need no other example that to look at current makeup legislature. We have let's talk 2A issues, right? We can talk about the left and anti-gun and all this. Let's bring it back around to guns. We can talk about the left. We can talk about anti-gun. We can talk about that all day long. And they're after our freedoms. And it's horrible. And what rights are we losing? We can talk about all that. But here's the thing: Republicans, right wings, conservatives. I'm looking at you. I'm staring at you. I'm pointing at you right now. Here's the thing: got a Republican president in a lame duck session. We've got the House. We've got the Senate. I'm throwing myself in the pocket with Republicans by saying we, because I'm really not. And effectively got the Supreme Court, right? Got all branches of government. The NFA could get pulled and go away. There could be national reciprocity. We could get rid of all the background checks in the NICS system. We could get rid of, trash every gun law on the federal level tomorrow. It could happen if the conservatives, the Republicans, the right wing was serious about the liberty and freedom and the protections offered us under the Second Amendment. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that on that particular side, right? So that goes into what you're saying, right? Is And that's why it doesn't matter what side it is, politicians suck. Is because the vast majority of them use whatever the issue might be as a political football. It's nothing more than rah, rah, let's play the game with this and gin people up and whip people up and get some votes and make some money and whatever. It's not about the liberty and freedom. If it was right now, there would be zero gun laws on the books.
Right.
Because there's the conservative right, the supposed 2A side, pro 2A side, holds all the cards and has all the power.
Right.
It makes no sense otherwise.
And we get
follow the common sense. It makes no sense.
No, I agree with you. And let's just say, and let's just be, how shall we say, let's just ignore the gun law aspect of it for a second. Let's just say, well, that, gun laws are needed to protect crime, right? We'll just hold that thought for 1 second to make the point that if Republicans and conservatives were really serious about freedom and liberty in this country, they would deregulate a whole lot more. They would have gone in there into the bureaucratic agencies that have created rules and laws circumventing our Constitution. They go in, they gut the funding of spending of money, to fund NGOs and other organizations that are anti, conservative minded or freedom minded principles. They would go in and unravel so much of government. And I understand DC is embedded in concrete and it's been being done that way for a long time, but they're not really making the strong moves to do so that we've been promised in campaign over campaign over campaign. Now, whether you agree with Trump or not on Thomas Massey or, Marjorie Taylor Greene or some of these people that have gotten expelled, because they weren't towing the line or not. But some of those people like Thomas Massey was just a raw freedom, liberty minded anti-government guy. And he spoke out about it and he got ousted.
Yeah.
And I think that makes your point on for one politician.
Yeah. I think it's funny. You said gun laws protect crime.
No. Well, yeah. Well, no. I was only bringing that up to make the point that the people on the other side said is we need gun laws to stop crime.
You said to protect, but
yeah. Well,
I think you meant to say to protect against. But here's the thing: what you said is 100% absolutely true. Gun laws.
Did you listen to yesterday's show?
Because here's the thing. Where's the number one place that mass events happen? Gun-free zones.
Right.
Who created gun-free zones? Joe Biden. Under what premise? Under legislatory action. So therefore, there was a law that created gun-free zones, and gun-free zones obviously protect crime. So,
I said this on my show yesterday, something similar. I said, all the gun laws end up protecting the criminals because they create these gun laws, and all the criminals that violate them, these liberal judges let them go scot-free. You'll have all these recidivists that have committed gun crime after gun crime after gun crime after murder after this after that, and the activist judges let them go. So those gun laws are protecting them. But who ends up going to jail when they violate a gun law? The person who used the gun in self-defense and just happened to have a magazine that had one extra bullet than they were supposed to according to the law, and they go to jail for 10 years.
Oh, accidentally have a piece of brass in their carry-on luggage. I mean, there's so many weird, horrible stories that I've heard over that. That is ridiculous. I mean, how you can't apply nuance to things, I don't know, but it's because they play, again, political football. They play politics with the legal system, unfortunately.
Exactly. Well, Chris, I thank you so much.
You better get out of here while you can, or I'm not going to shut up.
Well, I got another show in a few minutes that I got to record and get on there. But this is
Right.
why I brought you on. I've always loved talking to you. I've always loved spending time with you and getting to know you. I'm glad that we got to do a good podcast on that today. And
Always,
and
man.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in about a month. You
Yeah.
know, I'll we'll talk some more then in person. Hang on there 1 second, Chris, while I'll close out the show and ask my listeners to please share the show, but also go visit Revere Payments and /WWFA, reverepayments.com /WWFA. Don't forget about my friends at Bond Arms, and then don't forget about my friends at Patriot Mobile. You can get better cell service with a company that puts America first. Go to patriotmobile.com /WWFA to get your discount there. Thank you so much. Please share the show, and I'll see you on the next episode.